When I was young, I never imagined my life would end up this way. I grew up in a small town where people knew each other by name, where every morning started with the smell of baked bread and the sound of children running barefoot in the fields. I was one of them once, full of laughter, full of dreams. I married the love of my life, Henry, when I was 20. He wasn't rich, but he was kind. We had nothing but a few coins and a piece of land my father gifted us. That land became our life. Together, we built a small wooden house on it. Plank by plank, nail by nail. I remember the day we put the last piece of the roof together. Henry looked at me with sweat on his forehead and said, "This isn't just a house, Sabrina. This is our promise to each other." And he was right. That house saw everything. The birth of our children, the laughter, the fights, the dinners, the sleepless nights. It was where we cried when times were hard and where we danced when life was kind. We had 3 children. Michael, the eldest, Emily, my sweet girl in the middle, and Ryan, the youngest, who was always chasing butterflies and getting into trouble. They were my whole world. I lived every day for them, sewing their clothes, cooking their meals, saving every little penny so they could study and live a better life. Henry passed away too soon. A heart attack. One minute he was fixing the fence, the next he was gone. I still remember the way his hand slipped from mine in the hospital. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. But I told myself, "Sabrina, you can't break now. Your children need you." Years passed, the kids grew up, found jobs, got married, and moved away. I was proud of them, proud that all my sacrifices had meaning. I thought they'd come visit often, sit in the garden where their father used to grow tomatoes, laugh about the old days. But life, I learned, has a cruel way of making people forget where they came from. At first, the phone calls came every week, then once a month, then rarely. When I did hear from them, it was always about something. Money, mostly. Michael's business was struggling. Emily wanted to move into a bigger house. Ryan was investing in something promising. I gave them what I could. Sometimes I lied about my own needs just to make them feel supported. A mother never stops giving, I used to say. But love, when one-sided, starts to hurt. One day, Michael came to visit. He looked restless, nervous even. We sat in the kitchen, and he avoided my eyes as he said, "Mom, that house? You're getting old. You should move somewhere safer, maybe an apartment closer to us." I smiled politely. "But son, this is my home. My father and I built it with our hands. Why would I leave it now?" He sighed. "Because, Mom, the land is valuable. You're sitting on gold here and you don't even know it. Developers are offering millions for property like this." I laughed softly. "Gold? Michael, this isn't gold. It's memories." He didn't smile. He just looked at me like I was a stubborn child. From that day, something changed. The calls became colder, the visits more frequent, but not out of love. They asked about the land, the title, the documents. Emily began visiting too, always with a tone of gentle persuasion. "Mom, imagine living in a modern flat with an elevator. You deserve comfort now." Comfort, I thought. What comfort could replace the sound of Henry's laughter echoing in these walls? Still, I ignored my unease. I told myself, they're just worried about me. Then one evening, all 3 of them came home together. It had been years since that happened. They brought food, my favorite, chicken stew, the kind Henry used to love. They said they missed me, that they wanted to have dinner as a family. My heart swelled with joy. I set the table myself, humming old songs. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a mother again, not a burden. We laughed, we ate, we reminisced. Michael poured me some soup, smiling. Emily held my hand. Ryan told me stories about his new business. But as the night went on, something felt strange. My body began to feel heavy, my vision blurry. My fingers trembled as I reached for the glass of water. "Mom, are you okay?" Emily asked, but her voice sounded distant, almost echoing. I tried to speak, but my words tangled. The last thing I remember before the world went dark was the look on Michael's face. Not fear, not concern, but guilt. And then, nothing. When I woke up, the room was dark, and everything felt heavy. My head throbbed and my hands were cold. I couldn't remember how I had gotten to bed, only flashes of the dinner table, the laughter, and my children's faces fading into shadows. For a moment, I thought it was just exhaustion, but then the pain began, sharp, deep, like my body was fighting itself. I tried to sit up, but my arms wouldn't obey me. My voice came out as a whisper, calling for Michael, for Emily, for Ryan, but the house was silent. They were gone. All three of them. No note, no call, no light left on, just empty dishes on the kitchen table, and the faint smell of the soup we'd shared. I don't remember much of the next 2 days. My neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, said she found me lying on the kitchen floor. She called the doctor, who said it was food poisoning, a bad reaction, probably something spoiled. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to admit existed, something inside me whispered otherwise. Still, I refused to believe it. They're my children, I told myself. They'd never hurt me. When I regained enough strength to move, I noticed something strange. My jewelry box was open. My documents, the house deed, the savings book, Henry's will, were gone. Panic rose in my chest. I called Michael, but his number was disconnected. Emily's phone went straight to voicemail. Ryan answered after several attempts, his voice hurried and distant. "Mom, you're fine now, right?" "Yes," I said slowly. "But where are the papers I kept in my dresser?" There was a pause. "Oh, I took them to make copies. For safety." My heart sank. Safety. That word had a new meaning now. Days turned into weeks. My children didn't visit, didn't call. The only visitor I had was the mailman. And one day, he brought a letter that made my hands tremble. It was from a property agent. "We confirm receipt of the signed sale agreement for the property located at 24 Rosewood Lane. The ownership transfer will be processed shortly." My breath caught. 24 Rosewood Lane? That was my home. The home Henry built. I rushed to the town office the next morning, clutching my shawl against the cold. The clerk there was kind but firm. He said, "Mrs. Taylor, your son Michael submitted the paperwork. You signed the transfer 2 weeks ago." "I what?" I asked, my voice cracking. He handed me the file. My signature was there, but it wasn't mine. My knees nearly gave way. The room blurred. All I could think was, they've taken everything. That evening, I sat in the empty house, the same one where my husband and I used to laugh under the leaky roof. The silence pressed down on me. I thought of my children as babies, their tiny hands clutching mine, their giggles echoing through these walls. How do hearts change so much? How do the same hands that once reached for you in love now take everything from you in greed? The night grew cold. I lit a candle and looked at the framed photo of Henry on the mantel. I whispered, "They've taken the house, Henry, but I'm still here." Tears came, but they weren't from weakness. They were from something else. Realization. They may have taken the walls we built, but they couldn't take the love that built them. I promised myself that night, I would not let bitterness rot what little heart I had left.
If I was to lose everything, I would lose it standing tall, the way Henry taught me.
I didn't leave the house for days after that. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't know who I was anymore. Everything I had worked for, everything Henry and I built with our hands, now belonged to someone else. I sat by the window every morning, watching people pass by, wondering how many of them had known betrayal from their own blood. But one morning, Mrs. Dorsey came by again. She brought me soup and warm bread and said, "Sabrina, you can't just sit here and fade away. You're stronger than this." Her words stayed with me. The next day, I went to the town records office again. I wanted to see everything for myself. The man there looked uncomfortable when he saw me. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, "the property was transferred to your son Michael, but what?" He hesitated. "The new owners, they're reselling it. A developer is building luxury villas on the land." I stared at him, trying to make sense of it. My children had already sold the home, not even a month after they took it. I walked out without saying a word. The sun was harsh that day, but I didn't feel it. My whole body felt cold. That evening, I gathered my strength and took the old bus to the city. I knew where Michael worked, an office downtown, all glass and steel. I waited for him in the lobby until he came down, dressed sharply in a suit. When he saw me, his face changed. Guilt flickered across his eyes, but it vanished quickly. "Mom," he said softly, glancing around, "you shouldn't be here." "I shouldn't be here," I repeated. "Michael, you took everything. The house, your father's land. You even took my name off the papers." He sighed. "Mom, you don't understand. It was a good deal. You didn't need that old place anymore. You were living alone, struggling. This is for your own good." "For my good?" My voice trembled. "You sold the memories of your childhood for money." He looked away. "That's just life now, Mom. Things change." I wanted to shout, to cry, to curse him for what he'd done. But instead, I felt an ache, not anger, just sorrow, a deep, quiet kind that seeps into your bones. Before I could say more, Emily appeared. She must have known I'd come. Her voice was gentle, almost pleading. "Mom, please don't make this harder. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought it was time you moved on." I looked at her, at my daughter, the same one who used to braid my hair as a little girl. And I realized something in that moment. They weren't monsters. They were lost. Lost in a world that measures worth in money, not love. That night, I didn't go back home. I couldn't. I walked for hours until I found myself standing outside a small church. The doors were open, candles flickering inside. I sat on the last bench and whispered, "Why, Lord, why give me children only to take them away like this?" The priest, an old man with kind eyes, came and sat beside me. He said softly, "Sometimes we lose everything so we can see what was real all along." Those words stayed with me. The next day, I left town. I packed only a few clothes and a photo of Henry. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't live in a place full of ghosts. I found a small village by the sea. It was quiet, just fishermen, children, and the sound of waves. I rented a tiny room above a grocery store. For the first time in years, I slept without fear of the phone ringing or the doorbell echoing with disappointment. As the days passed, I began to heal, not in body, but in spirit. I helped the neighbors bake bread, read stories to the children at the school, planted flowers by my window. People there didn't care about wealth. They cared about kindness.
Sometimes, when I looked at the sunset over the ocean, I thought of my children. I still loved them, maybe I always would, but I also knew I couldn't live my life waiting for apologies that might never come. I had found something they'd lost: peace.
Years passed quietly by the sea. The salty wind became my comfort, and the waves my only friends who never lied. My hair had turned completely silver, and the wrinkles on my hands told the story of every sorrow, every joy, every betrayal I had endured. But despite all that, there was peace, a peace I once thought I'd never find again. I had made a life for myself in that little village. The people called me Grandma Sabby. I laughed when the children shouted it from the docks. I would bake bread for the fishermen, sew dresses for the little girls, and every Sunday I'd sit by the old oak tree reading letters that no one ever sent me. But one morning, as I was hanging clothes under the sun, a young man came running down the road. He was a delivery boy, dusty and out of breath. "Are you Mrs. Sabrina Taylor?" he asked. "Yes, dear," I said, confused. He handed me an envelope, thick, with trembling handwriting I knew instantly. It was Michael's. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter and an old photograph, the one of Henry holding baby Emily in front of the house. The letter read, "Mom, I don't know if this will reach you, but I hope it does. Emily told me you were living by the sea. I've done many wrong things in my life, but nothing as heavy as what I did to you. The house we took, it's gone now. The money too. I thought I could buy happiness, but all I bought was loneliness. Emily barely speaks to me now. She's moved abroad, and I live alone in a small apartment that feels colder than the grave. I wanted to ask for your forgiveness, but I know I don't deserve it. I hope you're at peace wherever you are. Your son, Michael." I pressed the letter to my heart and cried, not out of pain, but out of release. I had waited years to hear those words, not because I needed them to move on, but because every mother carries a small hope that her children will one day understand. That evening, I took out my old journal and began to write my final letter, one that I knew my children would read someday after I was gone. My dear Michael and Emily, life gave me two gifts, you both. And though you hurt me in ways I could never have imagined, I want you to know something. I forgive you. I don't forgive because I'm weak, but because I learned that hate keeps us chained, and love, even when it's broken, sets us free. You took the house, but not the memories. You took the papers, but not the years of laughter within those walls. Those belong to me and to your father, who loved you beyond measure. I pray that you never forget where you came from, and that someday you'll build not houses of marble, but homes of heart. Your mother, Sabrina. When I finished writing, I folded the letter neatly and placed it in my old wooden box beside Henry's photograph. Then I went to sit by the ocean one last time. The sunset was golden that day, the sky painted with hues of forgiveness and light. I closed my eyes and whispered softly, "Henry, I kept my promise. I didn't let the darkness win." As the waves touched my feet, I smiled. The sea, which once had seemed endless and lonely, now felt like a friend waiting to take me home. Weeks later, when the villagers found me sitting peacefully under the oak tree, the wind was still. The letter box was open beside me, and a smile rested gently on my face. Words read of the old woman who had been betrayed but left the world with grace,
not bitterness. And years later, when Michael and Emily came to that village to visit her grave, they found her final words carved on the stone. Forgive before it's too late. Love before it's gone. And remember, no house is a home without a heart. The waves sang softly that day, as if the sea itself whispered her name, Sabrina, carrying her love across the horizon.